Okay, I'm happy that Richard is back here on our channel. Hi, Richard. How are you?
Hey, doctor, I'm doing great. How are you?
Okay, yeah, I'm very happy because for our viewers, Richard is not only an experienced police officer, instructor, and trainer. Rich is also a very good analyst for bronze swords, antique bronze swords. He has been running a business also analyzing different types of bronze swords and items, because especially as far as copper alloyed items or bronze items are concerned, there are unfortunately, lots of fakes, and I call it criminal activities on the market, right? And Rich is one of those experts who has successfully recognized many of them. And you know that I just added it to our website that you were successfully one of the experts who exposed a big deal that they sold these fakes to collectors. So I pass the floor to you, and please explain the situation of bronze swords, weapons, or items, and how is the market? Why are there so many forgeries? What's going on there, Rich?
Well, anytime there's a way to make money, people are going to try it. And a lot of these items bring very large prices if you can convince people that the pieces are authentic. And that was one of the reasons I got into this I believe I started in 1999. I had been collecting for a while, and one of my collector friends mentioned the amount of forgeries that were out there. And he saw me on an internet auction about to purchase one. And he said, if you really want to be a serious collector, you have to spend more money on books than you do on your collection, because otherwise you're just going to be throwing money down the drain. And so I took his advice and started expanding my library so that I would have a lot of good reference material. I also looked in locally around me to find labs. I looked in a lot of places to find my collector friends. Sorry, I got distracted for just a second.
No problem.
And basically, the areas where I am not the expert, whether it's chemistry or soil analysis or metallurgy, something like that, then I source it out. I find someone who is, and I have them explain these things to me, and then I put it all together in a nice, neat package and take it from there.
Okay, perfect. And now, for example, let us go through some items, for example, you analyzed and you can share with us here. For example, on this slide, we have copper alloy vessel. And could you please explain to us a bit about this piece and what it is and how was it and so on?
This piece was fashioned, in my opinion, it's a replica, and I'm pretty confident in that opinion, of a Shang Dynasty ritual bronze vessel, which would date it, if it was authentic, to say anywhere from 1500 to 1100 BC. An auction, something like that, especially if the inscription were authentic, would be probably hundreds of thousands of dollars. So that gives you an idea of why somebody might want to fabricate one, is if they can convince someone that it's authentic, they can make a substantial amount of money.
Yeah, absolutely. And could you please explain why you think it's forgery is not the real piece? What leads you to this opinion?
It's hard to say just initially looking at something. When you've analyzed or you've had the privilege of looking at objects from a particular culture in a particular time period, you notice there are similarities and there are things that should or should not be there. On its face, if you look at the picture, you see a lot of white areas in the patina. There's green, but then in the green, there's also a lot of white.
Yes.
And that is often indicative of using salts or acids to create a fake patina. It's not to say you'll never see something like that on something that's authentic, but it's something that raises alarm bells in the beginning. For me, the clincher when I'm trying to prove or disprove whether or not something is authentic is to go down to the microscopic level and analyze the patina itself. Natural corrosion is really the process of copper trying to revert, well, in a copper alloy vessel or a bronze vessel, it's the metal itself going back to its original state. It doesn't like to exist as the alloy that it is. It wants to go back to being either malachite or azurite or some sort of copper ore. So the patinas actually form from inside the metal. They don't grow on the outside. They come out from the molecular structure of the metal. And this is a very slow process. It's a long-term process. And during this process, you'll see the crystals of the different alloy or compounds of copper start to form, and crystals take a long time to form. And if you scroll down, or if you go to some of the next pages where the micrographs show the patina enlarged between 10 and 4. Yes, sir.
This one is okay, or should I go more?
Yeah, no, that's a good one. The first two micrographs are showing what's purported to be an inscription. When you look, and it might not be as visible in these two images as it would be under the microscope as we're looking at it, but you see evidence of acid etching, which brings out the dendrites in the metal and allows them to be more visible. Then you see in the lower image on the right what I was talking about the white incrustations.
Yes.
And this, if you look at that image in particular, it looks more like some chemical was applied to the surface of the metal rather than the metal is corroding from the inside out. Again, none of these things individually would say definitively this is a replica or it's an authentic piece, but it's a matter of stacking all the evidence together and then determining the likelihood of it being an authentic piece or a replica. I'm trying to formulate my words so that this comes out sounding right, because like I say, I'm not a chemist, but I get them to translate things for me. What we should be seeing in this image on the lower right is some sort of uniform crystal structure, and we're not. And that's characteristic of the entire surface of this piece. It would not be impossible for one little area to look like this. There is something called bronze disease, which is a corrosion, chloride corrosion that starts and a chemical reaction in the metal, and it will produce something very similar to this. Not identical, but very similar. And so this is just something that if I saw this over the entire surface of the piece, it tells me that this patina was likely artificially created. Are there other images of this particular piece microscopically as well?
These ones, the two I have of these pieces.
That was it.
Yeah.
Further on in the presentation,
yes,
we have an authentic piece here, and you'll see some of the things that I was talking about before that should be there that weren't on the previous piece that are found on this piece.
Okay, before we go ahead, what is this piece what we are looking at now? Could you explain?
This is a bracelet.
Yeah.
And it's pretty particularly identified to the Dien culture.
Okay.
They're one of the only cultures, in fact, the only one that I know of off the top of my head that worked in these microscopic or these tiny little malachite and sometimes other stone inlays that you see on this picture.
Yeah.
And somewhere in this report, I have the dimensions of these little discs that they cut and inlaid, and they're amazingly small.
This one, right?
There we go. This is one of the things that we look for in an authentic patina. You see the green areas and you see the blue areas. You're not always going to have blue areas in your patina, but it's a good thing when they show up, especially when they show up like this, because they're both carbonate hydroxides of copper, but one has an extra carbonate molecule. The azurite has the extra carbonate molecule, and they often appear together because they're so similar in their chemical structure. And one, it was explained to me that the azurite often becomes the malachite over the course of the patina process. But in fakes, I have yet to find one that has successfully been able to blend these two crystals on a microscopic level.
Ah, interesting.
So that's a good sign.
Yes.
Yes. And part of the authentication process, there's probably 80% or more of the items that are out there that you can look at and just say, you know what, I'm pretty sure that's not going to be authentic. There's probably 10 to 15% that require this level of analysis to prove or disprove one way or the other. And then there's a very small percentage of pieces that no matter how much you analyze them, they are going to be difficult to say for sure one way or the other. What's important to realize, and one of the things that I have to explain to a lot of people who have ended up collecting some fakes, is today we regard bronze as not very special. We make doorknobs out of it and vent registers and door hinges and things like that. But 1,000 years BC, 3,000 years ago, even 2,000 years ago, this was one of the rarest metals on Earth and the most valued metals because it had uses. We didn't have iron yet. This was the best we could do. And having a bronze vessel like the one we saw in the beginning would be the equivalent to owning a Michelangelo original. These were works of art that required hundreds of hours of dedication by a very skilled artisan. These were not things that were thrown into a mold and cast out of wax in 20 minutes. And they were meticulously created. And I have tried an experiment of my own where I took an authentic dagger and I had it 3D laser scanned and sent off to 3 different foundries to try to reproduce a dagger that had the same quality as the original. And it cost me a considerable amount of money to come up with about 10 replicas that were not nearly as good as the original. And so these objects are works of art. And when you find one that's done very sloppily, that's a good indicator that it's made within the last few years. You see also malachite crystals in the bottom image, and how you have a piece or a image in the middle there, not an image, but in the middle of the image, there's a little split where the metal's coming apart.
Yes.
This, you can see also some copper oxide, which usually appears as red. All of these things appearing in conjunction like this with some sort of a crystal structure. And then you look back at the first vessel images that we had, the micrographs, where everything kind of looked just like it was slobbered on there.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah. That's one of the things that indicates that that first piece was something that someone applied a chemical to create the appearance of a patina versus what an actual patina looks like under magnification. So I hope this kind of makes sense. It's difficult for me to put into words sometimes.
Okay. Rich, I need to ask you some questions. Imagine, I mean, of course you shouldn't do that because you want to keep original patina. Right. Imagine we are going to grind the whole patina on an original piece of wood. I mean, you shouldn't do that, but imagine. Right. You reach the original metal. What color should copper alloy, antique color, what color should antique copper alloy have or bronze have?
It depends on the level of the corrosion. There are plenty of pieces that the corrosion has not reached deep inside the material.
Yeah.
It starts out underneath the surface, but not on the surface, but it does start closer to the surface. And depending on the quality of the bronze casting in when it was actually cast, you might be able to grind off a few millimeters and get down to what looks like brand new shiny bronze. In a lot of cases, the pieces are corroded all the way through. So you'll find different oxides or different levels of oxidation all the way through the piece. Typically, the copper oxide at first is the lowest layer. So if I scrape some of this green off,
Yeah.
it should start to reveal a red layer underneath.
Yes.
Which I have never been able to find anyone who could reproduce that artificially. So in a microscopic level, I can take a little steel probe and chip away at some of this green area, and it should reveal a pink or a red area underneath. On a fake piece or on a piece that has a patina applied over the surface, as soon as I start scraping that, there'll be an obvious boundary between where that corrosion is and virgin bronze.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, I understand.
Now,
I remember
chip away a little bit at a time and reveal different layers of corrosion.
Yeah, Rich, I remember talking to a German specialist. He was working for as a researcher. He was working for a renowned antique dealer. Let's put it like, I don't want to mention names, but you know what,
Sure.
a company. And he told me that they received materials, new materials from an Asian country. Okay, and he told me, when they removed this green area and they reached this second layer, and they thought first it was copper oxide, but what it was that they had a powder of copper oxide which they mixed in I don't know, glue, and then glued on it.
Yeah,
Epoxy, exactly.
well,
And
and
I
that's
was
what
so surprised. Yeah.
some of this technology is just brought over from the restorationists. Say you have a piece of bronze that breaks or that is chipped or damaged. They'll put it back together to the best they can, especially working for museums, art galleries, whatever. An intact piece is going to be more appreciated than one that's in fragments. But then they'll take, like you say, an actual patina that they ground off maybe some other piece or some other fragment and mix it in with some sort of an adhesive and apply it so that it matches the natural patina, which is one of the dangers when I'm trying to authenticate something. Is there are places that could be repaired that may show false patinas. So you can't just look at one little area of the piece. You have to analyze the piece as a whole. There's a piece that I have with me right here that's a bronze mirror. If you look closely, I don't know if you'll be able to see it on the
Yes,
on the
I
camera. It's been reassembled from several fragments, and there's a crack right here. There's a crack right here where there's been an artificial. I apologize for my dogs.
No problem.
Where the mirror has been reassembled, and then they had to apply a patina over the top to conceal the repair. So that's not uncommon. And if I was trying to create a fake, I would use pretty much the same technology sometimes. And
Okay.
so it can be, a fake patina can be applied with an adhesive using real corrosion byproducts, or it can be artificially created using some sort of a solvent.
Oh, I understand. But can I say that it for an expert like you, you still will recognize it? Am I correct? If this is
Usually, yeah. Usually you can look at it, like I say, if you can't spot it like I can on this mirror that I just showed you, you get down on a microscopic level and you can usually find them pretty easily. If there's an adhesive involved, there's a simple test that you can use, a little hot needle, and you can press it into a very small spot on the piece while you're looking at it under the microscope. And most adhesives will either melt or off gas in a way that a natural crystal would not. And so that's a very simple test that anyone can do. And a lot of times that shows you where the epoxy is, helps you identify whether it's a repair or whether it's over the entire patina. You know,
How hot should the needle be? Like red hot or?
I usually heat them up to red hot just because by the time I get it to the piece under the microscope, it's going to cool off significantly. Yeah. But you know, just probably a couple hundred degrees would melt the adhesives.
Yes.
But as an exact temperature, I couldn't tell you, unless that level of heat that you can get from, say, a little butane torch or something of that nature is not going to be intense enough to do damage to an authentic piece, especially not when it's on such a tiny portion of the surface, like the point of the needle. And it's, even if it's a repair, and I've used a hot pen to determine whether or not there's an artificial substance there, to the naked eye, it's still not visible.
Okay. Let's go to the next piece, and then you could, the next piece.
Okay. There's a close-up of the little malachite discs in the bracelet.
Okay. That's the bracelet. Okay.
Yeah, that's still the bracelet.
Yes. Okay.
You see the scale bar on the lower right, I believe, is a millimeter.
Yeah.
That gives you an idea of just how small these little discs were cut. And this piece dates to between 200 and 500 BC. And these slivers of malachite are very thin as well. I did not pull one out to see, but the adhesive that was used is usually an animal-based glue. And a pen will penetrate that as well. And there's very little depth in between these discs. But the lower image, you start to see some of the crystal structures that I should see on a natural corrosion product. And you contrast that with those first images on the ritual vessel, and where you saw no crystal structures whatsoever, you just saw a mass of powdery stuff. We have some very definite crystal structures that are growing here on a very small scale. Again, you have a little 1 millimeter scale bar down there to give you an idea.
Yes. Yes. It's amazing. So the whole bracelet was made of copper alloy. Then they put these stones, these malachite discs, and they glued on it with natural glue, animal glue.
Yes.
And they pinned them at the same time, right?
I'm not sure. I don't believe so. I think that the holes in the center of the discs were necessary to create the shape of the disc. Oh, so while I'm not sure that anyone has been able to verify exactly how the discs were created, the easiest way to do one would be having a long piece of malachite that you could essentially work like a lathe.
Yes, it's amazing, unbelievable.
Yeah, the work on these pieces is phenomenal.
Again, which was an authentic piece.
Yeah, it's not something that could be done easily, even by today's standards, without a lot of time and technology invested.
Yes.